Welcome back, y'all. So we've been, if you've been seeing my shorts, we've been doing a lot of talk about CAS or close air support, um, and the different weaponries that the U.S. has for close air support and how they're able to utilize that. And we've covered the different, in some long form videos, we've covered the different roles in aircraft, such as the A-10. That video might come out before this one. But today we're going to be covering the CAS or Close Air Support Wikipedia page. In this long one, we're not going to read the whole thing. We're going to just give a brief overview, a little bit of the history, where it's used in NATO today, and what aircraft. So, CAS or Close Air Support is defined as aerial weapon warfare actions, often air to ground actions such as strafes or airstrikes by military aircraft against hostile targets in close proximity to friendly forces. A form of the fire support, CAS is required a detailed integration of each mission with fire movement of all forces involved. CAS may be conducted using aerial bombs, glide bombs, missiles, rockets, autocannons, machine guns, and even direct energy weapons such as lasers. I don't know what CAS is using lasers, but maybe I'm just not caught up yet. The requirement for a detailed integration because of the proximity of fires or movement is determining factor. CAS may be needed to conduct during shaping operations with special forces or any type of forces. It doesn't have to be special ones. If the mission is required, a detailed integration with fire and movement of those forces. A closely related subset of air interdiction, battlefield air interdiction, denotes integration against units with near term effects of friendly units, but which does not require integration with friendly troops movements. That was a lot of use of integration and interdiction. CAS requires excellent coordination with ground forces typically handled by specialists such as artillery observers, which are what, something foxes? I don't know. Joint Terminal Attack Controls. Oh, that's what JTAC stands for? I didn't know that. And forward air controllers. World War One was the first conflict to make excessive use of CAS. Wow, absolutely not. Biplanes and CAS do not go well with me, or triplanes. Using relatively primitive methods to contrast to later military tactics, though it was made evident that proper coordination between aerial and ground forces via radio made attacks more effective. Well, no duh. Several conflicts during the interwar period, I don't know what that is, including the Polish Soviet War, the Spanish Civil War, and the Iraqi Revolt, and the Chaco War. Who is the Chaco War in between? Oh, Bolivia and Paraguay. Okay. Made notable use of CAS. World War II marked the universal acceptance of the integration of air to power into combined arms warfare, with all of the war's major combatants having developed effective air ground coordination techniques by conflicts end. New techniques such as the use of forward air control to guide CAS aircraft in identifying invasion stripes of the stripes used on planes also emerged at this time, being heavily shaped by the Italian campaign in the invasion of Normandy. CAS continued to advance during the conflict of the Cold War, especially the Korean War, Vietnam War. Major milestones introduced attack helicopter gunships and dedicated CAS attack jet aircraft. And we'll get into those dedicated ones, and you know the special one that I'm talking about. And then I did not know it started in World War One, but I don't think I would trust a biplane and not being able to see. But you got World War One, the interwar period, which is when the doctrine was developed further. The British used air power to great effects during very colonial hotspots in the, wow, shocker, British in colonies again, Middle East and North Africa. Shocker. Wouldn't have guessed that. The U.S. Marine Corps Aviation used it as a intervention force in support of U.S. Marine ground forces during the Banana Wars in such places as Haiti, the DR, and Nicaragua. That's cool. And of course, World War II used CAS. And then let's get down to current stuff. Who? Oh, yeah. And then the Red Air Force, Korean War, Vietnam, and the casserole debate. Yeah, in Vietnam, we'll cover it. They developed the House Board, which studied the question and published a landmark report describing the need of helicopter-based CAS requirements. So when attack helicopters actually started being used, and the Army did not think it was cool. At first, they said no, but then they realized they kind of needed them. So then that is when CAS actually started playing a role for the Army, I would guess. Alrighty. Let's get into here. This looks like a good spot. The U.S. Marine Corps Aviation was much more prepared for the application of CAS in the Vietnam War due to CAS being its central mission. In fact, in the late as 98, Marines were still claiming in their training manuals close air support as Marine Corps innovation, I'm sure. One of the main debates taking place within the Marine Corps during the war was whether to adopt helicopter gunships as part of the CAS doctrine, and what is adoption would mean for fixed-wing CAS in the Marine Corps. The issue would eventually be put to rest, however, as helicopter gunships proved crucial in combat environmental role in Vietnam. Yeah, I am sure. NATO and air-land battles since 77 introduction of modern military practices of CAS purposes. General Crosby E. Saint provided the AH-64 Apache. The doctrine cover use for air-land battle operations such as the NATO European theater. Yeah, when the Apache came around, you might want to use CAS. And then the aircraft that can do it, basically, and what aircraft do it best. Various aircraft can fill the air support roles. Military helicopters are also used for close air support and are so closely integrated with ground operations that in most countries they are operated by the Army rather than the Air Force. Yeah, the U.S. has a ton of attack helicopters that they're able to use for CAS. Fighters and ground attacks aircraft such as the A-10 provide close air support using rockets, missiles, bombs, and of course, the GAL-8 bird, which is what literally the A-10 was sole purpose was designed for CAS. Nothing else. It's too slow. It's too big. It can be seen from a mile away on any radar you have. So during the Second World War, a mixture of dive bombers and fighters were used for CAS missions. Dive bombing permitted greater accuracy than leveling bomb runs, while the rapid altitude changes made it difficult for anti-aircraft gunners to track. The Junkers Ju-87 Stuka is well known for the dive bomber built for the precision of bombing, but in which it was successfully used for CAS. It was fitted with wind-blown sirens on its landing gear to enhance its psychological effect. Wow. Is that the Japanese? No, the Germans. Wow. Should have known that. That's messed up. Of course, I guess it's all into PSYOPs. Some of the variants of the Stuka were equipped with a pair of 37mm cannons mounted under each wing as gun pods, and with 2 6-round magazines and armor-piercing rounds. That's not a lot. That's only 12 rounds. That's a little bit. Other than the North American Apache and the P-51 modified with dive brakes, the Americans and British used no dedicated CAS aircraft in the Second World War, preferring fighters and fighter bombers that could be compressed into CAS service, while some aircraft such as the Hawker Typhoon and the P-47 Thunderbolt performed admirably in that role. There were a number of compromises that prevented most firings from making effective CAS platforms. Yeah, because they have to dive and be able to pull up really fast. Fighters were usually optimized for high altitude operations without bombs or external ordnance. Flying at low levels with bombs quickly expended fuel. Cannons had to be mounted differently for strafing. Strafing required a further and lower convergence points than aerial combat did. Yeah, they didn't have any dedicated CAS systems, basically. Alrighty. No one cares about the Royal Navy. And let's get into some cooler stuff. Okay. I guess we are going to read about the Royal Navy Hawker Sea Fury fighters and the U.S. Vault F-4U Cross Air and the Douglas A-1 Skyraider were operated in ground attack capability during the Korean War. Outside of the conflict, these were numerous other occasions that Sea Fury was used as ground attack platform. Yeah, I'm sure when they're colonizing everywhere. Cuban Sea Furies operated by the Revolutionary Air Force were used to oppose the U.S. orchestrated Bay of Pigs. Everyone knows how the Bay of Pigs went down. Not good. No bueno. To attack incoming transport ships, disembarking ground forces alike. The A-1 Skyraider also saw later use, especially through Vietnam. Okay. Usually close air support is thought to be only fighters carried out by fighter bombers or dedicated ground attack craft such as the A-10 Warthog, the Su-50, the Su-25 Frogfoot, and attack helicopters such as the Apache. But even large, high-altitude bombers have successfully filled those support roles using precision-guided munitions. During operations and during freedom, the lack of fighter attack aircraft forced the military planners to rely heavily on bombers, particularly the B-1 Lancer, to fill CAS roles. Bomber CAS, and the B-1 is a beautiful aircraft. It is supersonic bomber, which is insane, and it takes off amazingly. The bomber CAS, relying mainly on GPS-guided munitions and laser-guided JDAMs, has evolved into a devastating tactic employment methodology and has the U.S. doctrine thinking regarding CAS in general with significant longer loiter times, range, and weapon and capacity. Bombers can be deployed to bases outside immediate battlefield area, with 12-hour missions being a commonplace since '01. After the initial collapse of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, airfields in Afghanistan became available for continuing operations against the Taliban and Al Qaeda. This is the result of a great number of CAS operations being undertaken by aircraft from the Belgium F-16 Fighting Falcon, Denmark F-16, the France Mirage 2000 Delta. That's ugly. The Netherlands F-16, Norway F-16, the UK's Harrier jets, and Tornado GR4s, also ugly, and the US A-10 F-16, Harrier, F-15 Strike Eagle, F-18 Hornet, F-18 Echo Foxtrot Super Hornet. Is that there too? I don't know the difference between the two. And UH-1 Yankee Venom from Bell. The use of information technology to direct, coordinate precision air support has increased in importance of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and using CAS. Laser, GPS, and battlefield data transfer routinely coordinate with a wide variety of air platforms able to provide CAS. The O3 Joint CAS doctrine reflects the increased use of electronic and optical technologies, direct targeted fires for CAS air platforms communicating with ground forces, and can also provide additional aerial, ground visual, ground convoy escort, and enhancement of command and control, or C2. Assets which can be particularly important in low intensity conflicts. Yeah. So, and if you want to read the doctrine by the Joint Chiefs of Staffs or U.S. Marine Corps, it's also available here. Even though the U.S. Marine Corps one says this is the 98 one, which, shocker, they're probably still using it. And it also, if you go back and go over what the countries are using for CAS, it's all American made besides France. Shocker, they're probably still catching an L and waving the white flag. The UK using mostly U.S. aircraft, the Harrier, and then everyone else F-16s, 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 which, granted, it's a great aircraft, but it is not the CAS. If you want to call it CAS, you got three options. You got the AC-130 Juliet Ghost Rider, I believe, by Lockheed Martin. You got the A-10 Warthog by Fairchild Republic, or you got the AH-64 Apache Hilo to call in. There is no other options, and if you need more options, that is just when you send in a call for fire to your closest artillery battery and hope they can touch you. But besides that, nothing else can touch those three. Change my mind. You can't. There's a reason the Harrier retired, and that's because we have the A-10, and that's because the AC-130 Ghost Rider Angel of Death exists, and the Apache exists. And this is WikiReader, and that was Close Air Support, and how the U.S. uses it, and where it was developed, and how long we have been using it. Tune in next time as we cover whatever topic you want. If it's military, we can do that. If it's random topics, we can also do that. Like, comment, and subscribe. Again, I'm WikiReader, and I'll see you next time.